Mission.
Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the gun guy. Thank you very much for watching my videos and my channel. I really do appreciate it. By the way, YouTube is always a questionable situation. You know, you never know whether we're going to be here or not, the way YouTube treats gun channels. We haven't received any strikes, community strikes. So I'm grateful for that. We're in good stead at the moment. But it doesn't take much, and all of a sudden the channel's gone. So we are duplicating the channel on Daily Motion, just so that you know. And they limit how many uploads we can put up a day, and we've got hundreds of videos to upload. So it may take us a week or two to get it done, but the channel will be completely duplicated at Daily Motion, and there is a link in the description, so you can check us out there. All right, now what I'm going to look at today are a couple of things. One is the SIGHTRON S-TAC scope that I have mounted on this number 4 Mark 1 Enfield 303. It was sent to me by Optics Planet so that I could mount it on this rifle for hunting purposes. And I found mounting it and sighting it in quite an entertaining adventure, which has nothing to do with the scope, by the way. It has to do with the rifle, and I will tell you that story here in a couple minutes. But first, let me take a look at the scope, which, by the way, I really like. There was something about the Sightron scopes. They're made, I think, mostly in Japan and the Philippines, but they seem to be made very well. So let me tell you about this one. There's some positives and some negatives to it. First of all, the positives. Let's do that first. I like to kind of keep things on the positive if I can. So first of all, there's some great positives with this scope. The glass appears to be of very good quality, and the tube is a 30mm tube or more, I don't know, but it's got 30mm rings is what it took. As a matter of fact, I screwed up, and when they sent me the scope, I ordered some rings for it, worn rings for it, and they're 20mm. So I had to run down to the Turners close to my house there and get some loopholed rings and get these 30mm rings, which work great. I really like the loopholed rings anyway. So nevertheless, I had to take care of that to get it mounted. But it is a big tube and very bright glass. So when you're using the scope, even during twilight, it's really bright. And that is extremely important. So you get a nice, crisp, bright image. The other thing I noticed too is that all the way through, at least on this scope anyway, all the way through from 2 to 10 in magnification, I still had that bright, crisp image. And one of the things I look for with optics is I want to see around the outside edges of the glass to see whether it distorts. And I didn't see much in the way of distortion at all the way through the magnification. It was nice and crisp and clear. Now this scope is more of a hunting application scope as far as I can tell. Sightron does make tactical scopes and scopes for competition. This scope, I think, would not really fit into that. It doesn't have a parallax adjustment. It doesn't have, there's several different features it doesn't have. But that's okay for a hunting application because you really don't need those things as far as I'm concerned for hunting. At least I don't. So let's look at what it does have. One, like I told you, it's got crisp, clean, clear glass, beautiful image all the way through. I was really excited about that. The adjustments from 2 to 10 for magnification, the knob is huge, and I'm grateful for that because sometimes you're hunting, it's cold, you got gloves on. You want to have something you can grab that's really positive, that doesn't have little fine little knurling or something. This doesn't. It's got great big, it's a great big knob. You can really get it, and yet it's very firm and very smooth. So you know once you set it someplace, it's not moving. I do like the click adjustments. When you click it, it's consistent. It's a nice crisp click, and it's consistent all the way through. Now I've had scopes, and I've used scopes that they have crisper clicks to it, but they also cost 4 or 5 times as much. So these are nice and crisp, and then I think the other thing for me is they're crisp and they're consistent. You don't get a few crisp clicks and 3 mushy ones. They're consistent all the way through, and that's the case with both the elevation and the windage knob. So I didn't find any issues with that. And then once you get it zeroed and you've got it where you want it for the rifle and ammunition combination, if you want to reset or set your turret numbers to 0, all you have to do is pull them up or pull them out and then turn it to 0 and then set it back down again, and now you know what your 0 is. So if you later want to make a small adjustment because of the shot you're taking, you can do that starting from 0 and then take it right back to what your 0 is. So it's really nice. You can do it with both windage and elevation. They simply snap out, snap back in, and then obviously there's caps for them because this is more of a hunting scope. Once you got it set up, you twist the caps back on, and then your adjustments are safe and they're not going to get beat up. So I found it to be a really positive scope for what it's designed to do, which is to be a fairly reasonably priced outstandingly made scope for the average working stiff like me, who doesn't have thousands of dollars to spend on optics or even $500 to spend on an optic. This one is very nicely priced and yet provides some great features for it for the purpose that it's designed to do, which is get old guys like me on target very quickly and very easily for hunting purposes or for shooting if they want to use it for that. But for me, it's more of a hunting application. Now, let me tell you about the few negatives I found. Those are the positives, and there's a lot of them. And I may have forgotten one or two, I don't know. But here's the negatives. There aren't very many. One negative is that the reticle, because it's not an illuminated scope, the reticle is very, very fine and therefore very difficult to see up against a dark background, at least for an old guy with old eyes like mine. Now, you can adjust the focus, and the focus knob is very, very solidly set. So once it's set, it's not moving. I like that, and it is very crisp, but I did find that when I had the reticle up against something very dark, I was able to get the reticle, but the holdover points were tougher for me to see, and I want to know what those holdover points are. That's important for me. It is called a Hunter Holdover Reticle Generation 2. Well, I'm going to suggest they might want to look at Generation 3 and make those a little bit bigger. All right, here's the other one, is that the finish looks nice, but it's not very durable, and it's easily scratched. I mean, in one day's shooting, I mounted it and shot it, and in one day of just mounting it and shooting it, and I was very gentle with it mounting it. It's not the first scope I've ever mounted in my life, and I didn't do anything abnormal with shooting it. I just put it on the rest and shot it, and it got set in the case and back and forth, and I really tried to take care of it, and yet it's got a scratch there, it's got a scratch there, it's got one there, it's got one here, it's got one there. I mean, there are little scratches, but the finish should be better than that. It shouldn't be so easily scratched. Now look, it's on a surplus rifle that's a little scratched on its own. So does it really bother me? No. Even if it had the best finish in the world, would it still get scratches when I'm using it? Sure. But you kind of don't want it to be such a thin coating or such a poor finish that it's scratched the first day when you go to the range. So that is one negative on it. The finish is not as durable as I would have liked it to be. Now, it did come with instructions, and they're okay, but they're not, I wouldn't put them in the great category. They certainly tell you about the scope, but there's some things they don't bother to mention, like they don't give you the specs on the scope, so there's some things about it that you don't know because the specs aren't in it. It's a generic little booklet, generically about their scopes, but it does not deal specifically with this model, and I think they need that. Likewise, you get the reticle description, which is nice, and it has a nice picture of the reticle down here. But it doesn't necessarily deal with this specific scope very well. That's one problem. And the other problem is both of those things are written in Scopeese or optic-ese or whatever. So unless you speak optic-ese, you may not have an idea what they're talking about. So that's one of the issues with the instructions. I'm okay with it, and it helped me out a lot, but I had to really it's like reading a textbook. I had to go back and read it 2 or 3 times sometimes to actually figure out what they were talking about. And then they do give you this nice little chart because they have no idea. It's actually 4 pages printed on 2. They have no idea what caliber of rifle you're going to put this on, so they give you lots of options with regard to caliber and load. And that's awesome. Obviously, 303 British is not on here because it's an unusual caliber, so I was looking at 308 and some other similar cartridges to see if I could figure out where best to be for the holdovers. Nevertheless, I'm an old guy. This thing is written in teeny-weeny little print that is so small that, I mean, I don't care what distance I hold it at. I felt like my great-grandmother because I had to get out my reading glasses and a magnifying glass to actually see them. So my suggestion to Sightron would be print it a little bigger, please, and it'll be a little easier for folks that buy the scope to read it. The other option might be make it electronic so that we can, make it bigger on the screen so that old dudes like us can actually read it. I realize it's young people who write these things, right? They're, 20-something. I'm not. And you get the older guys a little tough to see the instructions. Now, beyond that, and I don't want to end with negatives, I will tell you I'm really happy with the scope. The scope is very good. It's really comfortable. The eye relief is plenty. It's between 3.5 and 4 inches, right around there. And it was perfect all the way through. I didn't have any trouble with the eye relief. The only trouble I had with the eye relief was not because of the scope. It was because of the oddball cheek piece I had to build out of cardboard in order to sight it in. So I mount the scope, right? It's a World War II rifle. And I'm thinking, you know, it was made in 1945, I think, or 44, something like that. Anyway, old rifle. And I'm thinking, well, I'll put a scope on it, it'll be fine. And I forgot that when you mount a scope on one of these rifles were obviously designed to be used with iron sights. You have this very low comb back here because the scope takes a dip so that it gets your cheek weld low enough that you can line up with the iron sights for the average person pretty well. So I put the scope on it. I discovered the scope is up here and my cheek weld is down here. And I'm wanting to shoot the gun the next day. I had all planned to do that. You know, you get a new toy and you want to go out and shoot it. So I'm all jazzed up about shooting it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to get this done. So I called around. I called every gun shop in town. Nobody had any kind of strap-on cheek piece that I could use to rise that cheek weld up. So I got out the old, well, it's up there somewhere. I got up the old box tape gun. Here it is. Got the old box tape gun out, and I got out some, you know, a little box, and I cut it up, and I made a cheek riser of sorts so that I could have a cheek weld. Well, the problem is, yeah, it was really high and goofy looking, but it was also very wide. So you can see as I'm trying to shoot the rifle, I'm trying to jam my cheek into it, but push my cheek to the right because it's pushing me off center, so I couldn't get my eye behind the scope. So it was really kind of interesting to do, and I've since cut it off of there, but you know, it got me through the day and it was fine. It just goes to show that, you know, when you have nothing else, you do what you can with what you got, and you can make it work. Now I am shopping for an appropriate and proper cheek piece to go back there to adjust a rifle. I've found two I think are interesting, and whichever one I get, I'll take a look at it and do a little review on it. The other thing is that mounting it on this rifle was an exercise in choosing a mount, and I'm going to do a separate review on that mount, which I got from SunTech, I think, or Sun Optics, I'm sorry, Sun Optics USA. And I'll tell you a little bit about this mount and why I thought it was going to be absolutely awful, and it's not. And I'll tell you that in the next video I do when we talk about this. And by then, hopefully, I'm hoping I have the cheek piece. I'll be able to talk about both of them and actually getting this rifle all set up to use as a scoped rifle rather than an iron-sighted one. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a great week. Check out this scope from Sightron. You can find it on Optics Planet, actually, and there's a link to the scope on Optics Planet in the description. Optics Planet's the one that sent it to me for T&E, and I'm very grateful for that. I will tell you, Optics Planet is awesome, and if you want to make purchases there, whether it's this scope or anything else, if you use the code GUNGUY5, it will save you 5% on all of your purchases at Optics Planet. Not just the scope, and not just this time. It will save you all the time. So anytime you're buying something from Optics Planet, make sure you use GUNGUY5 to save 5%. And please do check out the scope. Aside from the couple of little negatives, which was the finish isn't as good as I'd like it to be, and the reticles are a little fine, I mean, other than that, it's awesome, particularly for the price. Thanks again. Have a great week, and please be safe.